under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
James Burton,
Here.
Ken Jones, absent, Jeff Gard,
Here.
Robert Beadle,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
James Weiss.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, approval of the regular agenda. Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Was there a question online or? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, agenda is approved as submitted. Under disclosures of conflicts of interest, I just want to mention I did speak with Melina Meyer regarding marijuana issues, and I know several councilmen have as well. So just to kind of, I guess, facilitate a group discussion, my conversation was just about legislative issues, about the laws and history and so forth. Nothing really entered into quasi-judicial conversation. So unless council had any discussions along those lines, I think we all had the same conversation. So, okay, I'm seeing nods. So does council have any other conflicts of interest to disclose? Okay, hearing none. Communications by and petitions from visitors. And just note for the record, Councilman Jones is here. Our guest speaker is city lobbyist John Bitney. And we'll turn the mic over to you.
Well, thank you and Happy New Year. I'm going to try to be real as brief as I can. I know you have a long agenda here. My purpose here is just to provide you with a brief and an overview on the upcoming legislative session. I believe there should be a report that sort of summarizes the issues down in Juneau in your packet here. And it's just trying to get at where we need to watch out and where some opportunities may lie for us. I've spoken to the mayor about his availability and coming down and perhaps some of the things that we need to address and people we need to speak to. And I'm hoping just to get a sense from you on where, if you have any concerns or things that you'd like to see done as we kind of just go through this real quickly. Just kind of going through it just real fast here. This is meant to just kind of give you sort of a lay of the land on where the negotiations are in terms of solving the state's fiscal issue, which is obviously the big issue on the table. As we go into the session, what always drives or sets the tone and gets things going is the governor's budget. It comes out on December 15th. And then the plan that he has, the expenditures, the proposals, and how to pay for it is really what sort of kicks things off and sets that initial dynamic. And so that's kind of what my report here focused on, was to try to summarize what the governor put on the table, and then obviously the dynamics that puts in place. He has an operating budget that, is obviously the big expenditure of the state, and but the key is how to pay for it. And with oil being what it is, the big ticket item on the table is Senate Bill 26, which tries to come up with a formula for the state to take money from the permanent fund. I know you all are probably pretty familiar with public discussions and what's been called the percent of market value, or POMV, where you take a percentage of the market value annually from the fund and apply that to the state. From that amount that then comes in, the legislature and the governor obviously would come to an agreement on how much of that you would use to pay for dividends, how much would then go into the general fund to pay for the government. And that's where both the House and the Senate, as I've outlined here, have passed different versions of Senate Bill 26, and it's in a conference committee that's trying to reconcile it. The governor, in putting his budget on the table, made the assumption that they would come to an agreement and would then pick up, if you will, the deficit of about $2.5 billion from the permanent fund to pay for it. In addition to that, he put on the table what he called sort of an economic development package of capital projects in addition to his regular capital budget, which is paid for by a 1.5% employment tax. And where that, I think, is key for Cordova is he has $10 million in that economic package to go into the harbor grant program. The harbor grant program is kind of what we have looked at, obviously, to be a source of funds for the #1 project that's been on your capital project list here for some time now to fix the harbor. The catch is that it is a 50-50 match program. And obviously, Cordova is in a situation now where you're trying to just figure out how to make ends meet on a day-to-day basis here, and I can appreciate that. And really want to just take an aside here to really commend you for what you've done recently here. I know these decisions aren't tough, but when you look at what we're dealing with on the state level, you have taken control of your situation, and where you go forward and how you address it or change it, I think you really should be commended for you've brought things to where you can control them. You can decide whether you change them, modify them, however you want to do it. You've taken control, as opposed to we're seeing on the state level, kicking the can down the road is we're losing some control. Our bond rating is going down at the state level, and things are coming into play here that are going to be a lot more difficult as time goes by and people fail to sort of address the main issue on the table. I'm happy to talk. I know you have your capital project list and a resolution here later on in the agenda, and I don't want to take a lot of the time here before the public speaks, but I'm happy to talk to that in some detail. But one of the things I wanted to stress is that with that 50-50 match in the harbor grant program, if we're coming into the legislature asking for 100% funding for the harbor for things that otherwise are covered for all other municipalities under that 50-50 program, we're going to get a little bit of pushback from folks saying, why do you want 100% funding from the state for items that all other municipalities are getting 50-50 matching funds from to pay for things that fit under the scope of that grant program. It doesn't mean that you need to change your #1 project, in my opinion, because the way I read your resolution, it has an A, B, and a C. A is your floats, B is, I think, your fill and your shipyard, and sort of C is a catch-all. So clearly you have some items within your #1 that are outside the scope of that grant program that certainly can fit within what otherwise would normally be those kinds of things that the state would pay for. So as we go down, speaking with the mayor and going down and engaging the legislature, that's kind of going to be, I'm just trying to frame for you the conversation and what we're going to have with them and trying to figure out what they're willing to pay for and how we can maximize dollars for Cordova. I'll just wrap it up there. I went through some details here. Obviously, the governor's budget fully funds the education program for the school district. I've tried to I put a link in here to a Department of Education document that outlines the money that then would come to the school district and what the matching requirements are for the city in relation to that. And also that, obviously the Marine Highway is just an ongoing issue. We're not going to solve that issue here tonight, but it's been an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue, and that's about the best I can summarize that for you. So I think Mayor, if it's okay, I'll just stop there for now and make myself available for questions and
Sure.
see where I need to go.
Councilman Beadle?
I've got several, but I won't hog it. On that 50-50 match for Harbor, I mean, it doesn't matter where the 50% comes from, our 50%. If we can get federal money or to go with their 50.
My understanding is that the 50 is a local 50. I can check and see if a federal dollar counts, but I don't believe it does. But there's enough of a hesitancy that I would want to double check that, but I don't believe you can use a federal dollar for a match.
Well, it's kind of a bummer. I mean, we're in the same situation the state's in, and so it makes it difficult. And then if it works out that way, is there a limit? I mean, are they gonna say 10 million, 5 million, 1 million? We've got a project that's probably gonna cost us quite a bit.
Right.
You know, are they gonna cap their donation or their match part?
The program has a $5 million cap on the state's part. So the max obviously would then be 5 million from Cordova for a $10 million total. And the part I want to sort of stress, and I realize kind of getting into the resolution a little bit, but is that under the program, those communities that had their harbor transferred from the state, which includes Cordova, have what I call a blue chip, called a tier 1 application. And so you have one opportunity to file for a tier 1 grant, which is up to that maximum of $5 million from the state. So, you know, Cordova, I believe, is one of the last, if not the last, tier 1 community that still has yet to apply for its tier 1. And what a tier 1 means is if you apply, you immediately move to the top of the list. So that's a nice thing that we sort of have in our pocket here for at some point if we choose to go down that road. What the state has also told us, though, is that if you have a small renovation project, under what we call tier 2 normally, let's say 50, 100, I'm just making numbers up, you could apply for a tier 2 and it does not remove your tier 1 opportunity for a later date. So it's just something to be aware of. If you're spending money out of your city budget now for renovations and sort of those things that the program could pay for, you may want to consider looking at that tier 2 opportunity to then get that 50-50 match from the state before you then, at some point.
We've talked about that, and and the harbor does have a reserve fund, a depreciation fund. And just hearing grumblings that the feds might come up with a infrastructure bill, and was hoping to get a little piece of that.
Yep.
Then just one last quick question is, it says 1.5% employment tax. Now, what does that mean? I mean, is that if I'm an hourly worker, just any revenue I get? What's an employment tax?
It's another word for an income tax. To be being blunt here, I mean, normally we would call it an income tax, but without all the brackets. So that's essentially it. It's just sort of a low-grade income tax. It's estimated to generate about $300 million a year. There's about 350, I believe, in 320 million in the governor's package. But he calls it's a 3-year tax. So some of it is, you know, money on the come, because capital projects aren't all, you know, cash flow on capital project isn't all in 1 year, but his proposal is for a 3-year tax. But I guess where the opportunity is, and I appreciate your question, you've gotten to the heart of the matter, and, you know, how do we pay for it? But I think where the opportunity is that in one of the golden rules of writing budgets in the legislature is once you put projects on the table, regardless of how they're paid for. There's an expectation bar that's been raised out there in communities across the entire state that if you decide not to pass the tax and you pull those projects off the table, people feel you've taken something away from them. So just in the political dynamic, these projects are now on the table. There's 10 million in there for the Harbor Grant Program. There's 70 million in there for major maintenance and renovations to school districts, and we have that list. I don't believe that Cordova has a project in there, but there's a lot that do. And my point is that for the first time now in some years, we've got a lot of capital projects actually on the table. And if they don't pass the tax, there's a lot of political pressure behind the legislature to come up with some way to pay for them. Or they face that sort of disappointment amongst their constituents that they took something off the table.
Might not get a vote. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Weiss.
I have one, John. Just first paragraph, page 1 on the governor's budget. It assumes the passage of a motor fuel tax increase. What would that increase be?
I was afraid someone was going to ask. So it's a three-part. There's motor, aviation, and marine, and I believe and it's a two-phase increase. In the first year, it goes up. No, I'm going to get it wrong here, but I believe it's an 8 cent increase in the motor, and it's 4 cent in the marine, if I remember correctly. 4? I believe it's 4. But then it increases another 4 in the second year, so it's a 2-year phase in.
On both.
On all 3 of those tax
And
years.
how much was the aviation one?
If I remember correctly, it's 3.
Both years.
Correct.
Thank you.
And let me just and I may have those wrong, but I'm within a cent or two. But if when you read through this, what I was reporting here in terms of the negotiations between the House and the Senate on Senate Bill 26, and that the House wants a tax in order to basically give up its vote on the use of the permanent fund. The House at this point has said they're not going to give up a vote on the permanent fund for the fuel tax bill, which is why it hasn't passed yet. I mean, they want a bigger tax. To give up a $2 billion long-term commitment on the use of the permanent fund, from their point of view, requires a higher level of a bigger tax, if you will. So that's why the fuel tax is still sitting there. It's sort of, in some regards, it's sort of been considered by the state the low-hanging fruit, but from the sort of the Senate's point of view, they're a little more reluctant to pass a tax, and the House, from its point of view, is saying we want more than just the fuel tax for us to agree to the use of the permanent fund. That's where the tension has been.
So if with the timeline, typically on a new tax, if they passed a fuel tax in this session, would they implement it like July 1st for that fiscal?
It's a calendar year.
Okay, so it'd probably be
January 1
January 1 of 2019.
19, if they were to go through with it
Okay.
in its current form. And there's been a lot of pushback on, especially on the aviation side, because there are exemptions within the aviation tax for international flights, and then also. I'll give some credit to our Representative Stutes here. When the bill moved on the House side, there was an exemption put in the marine fuel tax for commercial fishermen. So it's got some issues to work out in order for it to get all the way through the process. But I think the bigger issue, like I say, has been trying to come to an agreement on Senate Bill 26 and what tax level the Senate is willing to pass that makes the House satisfied enough to then also agree to pass Senate Bill 26.
Any questions online? Councilman Burton or Manager Lanning?
No questions for me.
Okay.
None for me.
Councilman Gard?
I have a couple quick ones. Is there a sunset clause on that tier 1 harbor projects?
No.
That's into perpetuity?
Well, it applies to a certain category of projects, as I said, those that were harbors that were transferred. And so and you only get one shot at a tier 1 application, so it sort of has a natural sunset once everybody has made their application, then obviously that just naturally sunset. And I believe we're the last.
So we can be denied our tier 1?
Well, I don't think we would be, I think, but the fact that we're eligible for a tier 1 means if we apply for a harbor grant, we immediately move to the top of the list.
And is the tier 1 a 50-50?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, all grants are 50-50. It's just a matter of where you fall in the prioritization of there, and because all the tier 1 does is it moves you to the top, so you become first in line for the next funding availability.
And it's one and done. It's one and done. You just get one tier 1. So if you can muster your half, you want to and try to get the most you can out of the state. You want to try to get your full $5 million if you can.
And one last aside, this may be kind of Ouija board crystal ball. Oh, sorry. Maybe kind of a Ouija board crystal ball question, but what as entrenched as the 2 sides were down in Juneau, and there may be more sides than the 2, and this being an election year, how much movement are we optimistically looking at seeing down there?
It's a great question, and it's a great question. Well, I'll start off with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek. If we get out of Juneau before June, I'll be happy.
What's yours?
We got to come up with a way to pay for it somehow, and I guess we're running out of reserves, and we don't have the reserves now. Like, for example, what we've been using is the constitutional fund. So if they don't pass Senate Bill 26, there's nothing that the legislature has authority to spend from the permanent fund with a majority vote today. They've always had that appropriation power. But what political dynamic does then that set? So, but somehow we're going to have to pay for all this, and I don't see that this is going to happen quickly. I guess was the point is that we're going to probably be there into the summer months again, and with a little bit of brinksmanship is my guess. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. You've hit the nail on the head, though.
The unanswerable question. Thank you.
Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I guess I just kind of had an answer for what Jeff was asking. The way I understand that the Tier 1, Tier 2 harbor grant program, we were looking into it in the Harbor Commission a few years ago. At the time, I think there was 3 communities that hadn't applied for it. And since then, I believe Sitka used theirs, and there was one other community, I can't remember the name, but they used theirs also. So I think, was it Valdez? I think so. So we're one of the last ones, or the last one left. The thing is, we could always be denied because they might not fully fund the project. That's why it's so important for us to pass the resolution supporting them to fully fund that project in their budget. And for a couple of years, they didn't fund it. So there was applications, that even Tier 1 applications, that had to go by the wayside because of the budget crisis. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, council? And then we'll have an executive session at the end of the meeting. That's more to get directly into some of the deep strategy that might have a financial impact. So,
Thank you very much.
okay, thank you. Audience comments regarding agenda items. Excuse me.
Hi, it's Sylvia Lang. I'm not sure that it's actually on the agenda, but it was covered in the previous report, so I get to slide on in, I think. I'm here to discuss the Marine Highway System, AMHS, and a little over a year ago, the governor set up a committee called the Reform Committee to look at a different way, or to look at the marine highway system and come up with suggestions of what to do about what seems to be pretty broken. And I was asked to be on that committee. I couldn't make the commitment because I was too busy taking care of my mom. Mike Anderson stepped up. He's been our representative, or a representative on the committee. It went statewide, so it's not just coastal communities. It was really a diverse group of individuals. It still meets. And we used and then I just attended meetings as I could and stayed on their teleconferences and kept up on their work product. So it was done under the auspices of the Southeast Conference because they have already set in place workers and worker bees for this project. Where we're at right now is we came up with a work product that is essentially, we all agreed that the biggest problem we thought with the AMHS is its governance. And we know here in Cordova and have been victims of essentially the political football that is the marine highway system. And so we wanted to look at some kind of governance that took it at least one step removed from that direct influence of the Senate Finance Committee, which is, I guess, my take on it. But our vessel was tied up simply because of the budget crunch. We lost more than 50% of our service. So as a business owner in Cordova, I had a direct interest in seeing something done there. Now that we've identified the governance as the problem, we went out and we got some I think, really good information. They hired, what's the name of it? Elliott Bay Consulting, and then they looked at all the a lot anyway, not all the ferry systems of the world, but all that pertained. And then they looked deeply into, and the McDowell group looked deeply into who actually rides the ferry, what the fares are, when they ride it, where they came from. They looked at zip codes, everything. And so we have a lot of really good information now with which to work. And what we now have to do is sell this idea. Oh, I should tell you what the idea is. So the idea is to make it a state-run corporation, and with one shareholder, and that's the state of Alaska. Very similar to how the ADA is operated or the railroad is operated. And then look to forward funding of that corporation to take it out of this up and down of the budget. Probably looking at the best case scenario at this point would probably be 2 years forward funding, but at least we could get a schedule and know what boats we have. So in that vein, the next step is to go out and talk to try to get a political support for this idea. And we're not going to be able to do it with just the coastal communities. We need, and we've discussed this on the committee, is we need to talk to the chambers of commerce of all, all through South Central Alaska. If you look at the information, and it's on their website. Just go to the Southeast Conference, go down to Alaska Marine Highway reform, and all this information is there. And it's really kind of fascinating once you get into it. But if we could talk to the economic development councils and organizations of Anchorage, the large population centers, and get them on board with this idea, it's going to take some serious work. It's an uphill battle. There's no doubt about it. But, instead of just wringing our hands constantly about this marine highway system, we really have to get proactive and do something about it. So this is how we've identified it. And I've approached the council, and I sent a letter to Clay also, and we're proposing a 5-member ad hoc committee that can go out there and talk to chambers of commerce, mayors, wherever we can get, stir up some information, some interest in doing this kind of governance for the marine highway system. I just want to give you a little heads up on that. The chamber hasn't approved it yet. We're probably going to function anyway, and then try to get it under the chamber's umbrella and then go forward. We may be coming back to ask for a little bit of funding, and we would keep it minimal because a lot of us have to make those trips anyway. So, but I think it should be on your radar. As a business person, I think there are 2 important things that attract business to this town and keep businesses here and keep businesses healthy here. 1 is the cost of energy, and that's been approached. And 2 is transportation. I have serious concerns about transportation in this town. I don't know how much longer Alaska Airlines can run 700s in and out of here all winter long empty. I have concerns about the marine highway system. If one of those ferries now go down, we don't have a ferry, period. And I think we have to worry about this, and I think it should be really high on our priority list. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, but frankly, go to the southeastconference.org and look at the bottom there. It says AMHS reform, and then there's in there the reports that have been generated. It's pretty interesting. For instance, Cordova, 65% of our transportation on the marine highway system is in the summer and 35 in the winter, but Valdez is 96% summer and 4% winter. Those are the things that we knew anecdotally, but now we have the actual numbers. So we can make, and a board of directors and a CEO could react to those that kind of information quicker than the port captain talking to the finance chairman of the Senate.
So council, I realize we're on audience comments, but I promised that I'd bring an AMHS update, and I did put a little bit of a written one in my report, but this is better if you have any questions. Sylvia's been our representative there, so. Did you have any questions? Councilman Jones?
Well, from my understanding, one of the biggest issues with the reason the fast ferries they're not working as originally intended is, well, we never got our second fast ferry, but also the workers weren't from Cordova, and the cost of the travelers was exorbitantly high. And I was wondering if that's something that this working group has looked at.
We didn't get into the actual working of the foundation and believe me, there's all kinds of things. There was a lot of people there with a lot of opinions and uses of the ferry. But we kind of drilled down on what we thought we could do, and the most important thing we could do, and that was coming up with a new system, a new governance system. And once that's in place, then you have someone to go to with these kind of questions and kind of concerns, and then they could address them. Right now, we don't have anyone who really, it doesn't feel like we have anywhere to go. They have the, what's the name of that?
MTAB.
Yeah, MTAB, but it doesn't seem to carry much authority anymore. And so a board of directors and a CEO is held accountable, and we'd have a place to come to discuss, and they would be the ones that would be dealing with the various workers,
Unions.
unions. There's 3 unions and 6 union contracts for 9 vessels. I mean, there's work to be done. And going through all these, all the numbers, all the traffic patterns, which communities are underserved, which ones are overserved, all those kind of things would be the work of that new entity. Right now, it sits on the port captain's desk and he has to figure all this stuff out by himself. And I think, we can do that better with a new system.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia.
You bet.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, that's great.
Oh,
Don't give her a mic.
and whatever Greg and Melina says about that other issue, I'm in support of it.
But Councilman Jones, you're exactly right. They never fully implemented the transportation plan on the first vessel. That Chiniga was supposed to be home ported in Cordova, never supposed to leave. And we had an appointed special transportation representative to the governor who came to Cordova and told us that it would not leave for at least 2 years. And 6 months later it was in Ketchikan. So all the effort that the city put into working on lodging and housing and everything for a crew that was supposed to move here and live here permanently, all that went out the window and it drove the cost through the roof. So, but that's what happens when you have a political system, that the ferries just get moved around to whoever happens to have the clout. Okay, audience comments on agenda items?
Greg Meyer, 1 Kennedy Row. I guess this is our exciting family night out. I'd like to encourage you to vote no on resolution 01-18-03, and that is allowing cultivation, testing, and retail sales of marijuana in the city limits of Cordova. There's a few reasons. One, I really don't think it's necessary. I think there was a vote in the state a few years ago, and Cordova's vote was almost 2-1. And the way Cordova votes on issues about the road and the mayor and everything else, 2-1 is a landslide. And you're going to get some opposition. You're always going to have opposition. And it just seems like this industry is going to be a small business industry. And so far, I hate to say this, but this council and previous councils don't seem to be helping the little guy too much. I know you think it's a little deal that you took away the $30,000 credit to businesses. But, I've run the numbers. It's $20,000 to $40,000 it costs these little businesses to collect your sales tax. And I bet if you ran the numbers, there's a lot of these small businesses collect more sales tax and pay more property tax if you include all their taxes than the money they make for themselves and their families. I mean, just think about that. They're making more money for the city than they are for themselves. I don't know, it just seems like someone needs to stand up for the little guy. Ocean View, I'm just going to give you an example of you guys, and it's not all this council, but some of the council was here. Ocean Beauty put in an application to extend their fresh frozen, right? It went through the planning commission, fresh frozen extension approved, building approved. Got to the city council, oh, we want to do a fish meal plant. Was there a workshop? Some of these things are controversial and you guys let slide. This marijuana thing, you say, well, it's controversial, although there was a 2-1 vote. It's controversial, let's let the citizens decide. So what you're gonna do is delay a small business from starting up because you think it's controversial. But when it's a big guy and it might be controversial, you just let it slide on through. I don't think it's fair. And what this is gonna mean to this small business, if they have to wait till March to get started, that's going to make a 3-month delay. Why would you start a business if you don't know if you're going to be able to open the doors? That's not very good business sense. You know, and then what I've heard from a lot of councilors, oh, don't worry, it'll pass. So why put that impediment in front of a business? You think it's gonna pass, why do it? You're gonna delay, you could possibly delay a business from opening and collecting sales tax. You guys just raised taxes, you raised real estate tax, you rose, you created a new tax, and you took a credit away from businesses. Now a small business wants to contribute, add to the sales tax, and you're putting roadblocks in front of them. 3 months, if a business wants to start up before the season, our season here in Cordova is May through September. If they're not gonna be able to, Melina's not gonna be able to do her build out, she's gonna hopefully get approval from the state in late January, maybe February. Then she has to do a build out. And she has to get a hold of the fire marshal. She has to do her build out, get approved by the fire marshal. And I don't know about you guys, but the fire marshal doesn't come in Cordova very often. I haven't seen him in 2 years at our place. So she has to wait till the fire marshal gets here to approve her. We don't know when that's gonna be. She has to get security cameras in. There's a lot of state implements, things that are gonna get in her way of getting started. And the city's gonna get in her way of getting started. So her options are, go ahead and she's already got tens of thousands of dollars into this whole process. Her options are to put tens of thousands of more dollars in to starting up her business and hoping she can open the doors, or take her business out of town. Then you guys won't get any taxes. I just don't understand. So, I mean, if you guys can shed some light, I hope you do during the discussions of this meeting, but I appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, well, my dad just said a lot of the points that I was gonna make, but I did wanna talk to you guys a little bit, about the taxation part of it. Oh, Melina Meyer, 1 Canry Row. I have the application in for retail marijuana and cultivation into the state right now, and I wanted to talk to you about the part of the ordinance that talks about the taxing of marijuana in the city limits of Cordova. Cordova already has a 6% sales tax, and that is pretty high around the states. Most sales taxes are between 0 and 7%. A few communities have decided to add a marijuana tax of 5% like Anchorage, but Anchorage does not have a city sales tax, so it's 5% on top of it. The other communities that also decided to do the 5% were communities that had boroughs, like in Fairbanks, which Fairbanks has over half of the current industry right now that has licenses that are open and operating. And I did a little spreadsheet. I have 4 retail stores that I haven't got in contact with to confirm some of the numbers, so they're blank, and I'll email you guys all an updated copy of all the taxes, and I have a couple printouts that you can have here. But if you pass the tax to include it in the same section with hotels and car rentals, that will be a 12% tax on every purchase of marijuana. But right now, the city is collecting 0% tax on marijuana that's being bought and sold in Cordova. I think it's very easy to tax it out of city limits. Out at Hartney Bay, the city can't collect any sales tax when it's out of city limits. We're not a borough, we can't have a borough marijuana tax. So I have those numbers there. Before anything happens in this town, it'd be nice that we don't add a tax before we have some numbers to see how it would affect business and the market. I did say pretty much all that in my letters, and I did have a chance to go and talk to most of you. I didn't get around to talking to all of you with the holidays in between the meetings. And I'm still open to talking to all of you guys about the industry, and I know the ordinance still has first reading this time, and you have to work through some of those things. But I do want to talk about the putting it on the ballot for March. I went ahead and started this process mainly because of the vote was 2-1. Those are very high margins for a vote to come in this town, and And the city already had their current city tax, the charter code already had it, Cordova established you guys as a regulatory authority over this industry. So if we're waiting for an application to come in to decide to have the town vote on and stuff, it does put a halt into my plans of starting a business and being able to operate before the summer happens and be able to open the doors. It is a very onerous process of inspections, not just from the from the control board, but also from fire marshal and the DEC that is also does restaurants and processing plants. And anytime that there's food type goods and if something's being consumed, then it's also under their regulations too. So there's a lot of applications and permits that are going through. It's very onerous, expensive process, and this would be another hurdle of many hurdles and many obstacles in this industry. And I hope that you guys don't have it go to another vote. I think it's very unnecessary. And that's kind of all I have to say. I hope that I can talk to the rest of you. I know, sorry I didn't get around to talking to all of you. And I can answer any questions if people have reservations or don't understand the state regulations. There's a lot of regulations in there and it's a lot to go through, but I have, so if people have questions or community members have any concerns about it, I'm open to talking about them and you can pass on my contact information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Audience comments on agenda items? Okay, thank you. Chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions, CCMC. School board? Okay, nothing right now. So our student council representatives report and probably traveling, I guess. So vacation, still on vacation. Okay, next item is approval of the consent calendar.
I'll take the roll.
Roll call.
Robert Beadle,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
James Weiss,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
James Burton.
Yes.
Consent calendar is approved.
Okay, approval of minutes.
There are none.
We have none. No bids. Reports of officers, mayor's report. It seems like it's been really busy the last couple weeks. I have been in contact with Shortside Petroleum and the three processors just regarding fuel purchases and the impacts of the marine fuel tax. Just basically some relationship management there. Points North, I've been in correspondence with them regarding getting a letter to the Forest Service here and hope to have that in the next council packet. I want them to look at the draft and local Forest Service to look at a draft. But basically it's regarding their application to expand their fly area so that it's closer to town. And again, this is a big sales tax revenue issue for the city. So trying to help them get through some regulatory hurdles to get some additional fly zones. The North Pacific Fisheries Management Council meeting is on February 5th in Seattle. And I've been requested to attend that on behalf of the city. And it turns out that I'll be traveling to Juneau on other business the weekend before. And I'll talk about that in a second. But they are considering, they're on a 10-year cycle, but it sounds like it's 20 years since they've considered restructuring any restructures of the IFQ quotas. And they're considering community quotas and the potential for communities to have a 1% share. So some of the longliners have requested to testify on behalf of the city to see if we can. So there's lots of sides to this, and there's some fish groups that fish inside of town and outside of town. But the proposals are due by January 22nd, so I'll probably have a lot more to update by the 17th. And the other thing I'm going to ask, the one thing I'm going to ask for on the city's behalf as well is that they hold 5 meetings a year, and one of those is in an Alaskan fishing community. And I think it's been quite some time, if ever, that they've met in Cordova. So I think it'll be a pretty compelling case for them to hold a meeting here next year. And that's a week-long meeting that involves 50 to 100 people about Lake Board of Fish. So it'd be good for them to actually see our fishery here and, of course, spend some of their money here for a change. So those would be the goals there. Juneau, I'm going to be traveling there on other business anyway, but I'll have some time to probably meet with the governor on behalf of the city and go through some of the legislative priorities that you come up with. And I'll also probably put the Powell Creek Road project in front of him on CEC's behalf. But that wouldn't require any city's funding or really compete. The state's already working on their portion of the matching funds, and most of that would come from the federal government. And that would be a multi-million-dollar contract in Cordova that mostly local contractors could do, so that would actually be a good economic boost for us. Then I got a request to write a letter of support on the RCAC, for the RCAC regarding, there's a decision matrix on boom deployment and whatnot. The deadline is January 12th. I was a little uncomfortable because they're basically requesting a change that kind of forces a priority in the event of a spill. So I'll just report this, and then maybe if you have questions or anything, but if the council wants that letter to go forward, I'd be glad to do it. I just wasn't comfortable doing it for my own part. And I did request some additional information from RCAC, so you may see an email circulate or something on that before I send a letter out. I just feel like I have concern to not just go ahead and send that letter without council approval. Then, as Sylvia mentioned, I'll probably on the January 17th agenda bring an ad hoc committee request for a 5-member AMHS committee to promote, advocate for getting a full-time ferry in Cordova. And that I think would complement actually the Southeast Conference's work on the marine highway system. But I also did meet with Mayor Berkowitz, I mentioned before, and John Bitney, our lobbyist, has agreed to draft that letter for Mayor Berkowitz and I to co-sign on the importance of having a ferry in Prince William Sound, not only for Cordova, but for Anchorage's economy. And I think that'd be a pretty powerful statement to the legislature. You have rural and urban communities partnering on a letter like that. So capital projects upgrade. So at the federal level, I may have an opportunity to travel into DC in February, actually as part of this grid modernization grant. But again, I want to multitask there, and regardless of whether I'm not to go back to DC in person, I'm working on getting some fresh letters out. It looks like the administration is starting to move on federal infrastructure projects, and the harbor for the city and then Crater Lake for Cordova were the two that we'd kind of moved forward, so particularly the harbor. So the U.S. Coast Guard, I don't have an update, but they did say they were going to be on holidays. I didn't have a chance to call back today, but I did get at least a contact in Coast Guard Command to, again, advocate for them taking a harder, closer look at Cordova with our, waterfront upgrades kind of that we're considering anyway, to look at the deployment of those 2 fast cutters. And then you got a marine highway system update, and I had a written one in my packet. And then I mentioned Mayor Berkowitz's letter, so. That's what I had to add if there's any questions. Councilman Beadle.
Just, I probably should have, when I got the email there about the RCAC letter, what they're saying is that the present matrix right now is in the event of a spill in the Valdez area, so it'll be the marine terminal. This matrix says they pre-plan, they have a contingency plan. And for the Valdez Marine Terminal, if there's any oil spill to water, they deploy boom around the duck flats. It's on the town side. And then around the hatchery, I think there's buoys there already, the same. Okay, for some reason, I mean, this has been in effect, this matrix has been planned and stuff, and the oil companies have decided that the matrix they want to put, I mean, you'd have to have a major oil spill before they'd even think about deploying boom at the hatchery. A problem with that is in the event of a spill, a tanker going aground or something, It just automatic, vessels out of Whittier go to the hatcheries, and there's connexes there with the equipment. It's already pre-planned. They do drills, deploying it, then checking all that stuff. But they go and they deploy it, and then part of the crew can leave, and then it's manned there. So when oil does reach there, it's already protected. This is kind of is this something coming down if they're not even going to protect the hatcheries in next to the Valdez Marine Terminal, literally right next door? And it was just a month or two ago that their oil did hit the water. It does happen. I mean, these guys work really hard. Their safety is second to none. It happens. So this deployment of the boom is critical. They do have designated people. They have designated equipment. It doesn't interfere with the rest of the deployment. Like I said, they get the boom deployed. Say it takes 6 people, then you leave 2 people there to man it, the anchors or whatever. Most of us have done spill drills. Okay, the benefit to Cordova of it is Piswak takes 2% of our gross. Them fish caught at Valdez, 2% of that gross goes to Piswak. Valdez doesn't get it. I think Thane Miller came up with a number like $400,000 last year. The benefit to Cordova, if this hatchery gets oiled, we can lose a season. This is our early season. The steiners, we start on the eastern side of the sound in Valdez. It's a huge boost for our economy. The guys go to work. Okay, the equipment's there. The resources are already allocated. For some reason, I don't know why, they're always messing. We could spend, well, it takes.
So maybe actually for efficiency purposes, is a general will of council that we write a letter of support for that, you think, or?
I highly recommend it.
I'm seeing nods pretty much all the way around, so.
We've had a long history of this. When we had this spill before, we used to have dedicated spill people for the Exxon Valdez.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and get that letter out then.
And it can get you more information. I mean, I have, it was supposed to, but I can.
All right, no, that's fine. And there was a draft letter there, I think, template, and I'll just copy that to council.
And also, if anybody, I mean, the deadline's January 12th. If somebody wants to write support, it's not just council or reps. It's it's you. But the importance of if we had just had that oil spill and if they didn't deploy boom, or, were they contaminating the area? So it is important. We don't want to do 89 again. Just more complacent. Oh, it'll never happen. So this just kind of keeps them on task.
And then basically it's just requesting a public hearing with DEC so that they can allow some more public input on the process.
They modifying the Valdez Marine Terminal contingency plan. To do it, they have to have a public hearing. And it's such a gross major change that RCAC, PISWAC, Valdez Hatchery, I forget who else, is asking for, I'm going to butcher this word, adjudicatory, thank you. So the thing is, they can't sue the oil company. It's kind of like mediation. They have to go and present it before DEC. And DEC then makes a ruling. So anyway, we're trying to get support that says, no, you got to do your job. That's major contaminants hitting the water. No.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for bringing that forward to Councilman Beadle. Councilman Schaefer.
Could you send out more information about that?
Yeah.
Do you have more information about that you could send around?
I got a request. Yeah, I have the request, and I'll email that. I'll forward that to council. I should have done that right away, actually. So, okay. Any other questions on the mayor's report? Okay, manager's report.
Good evening, and it's nice to see you all. Happy New Year. I'm just I'm on about a 2-minute delay here, so Robert's just finishing up what he was saying. I was reading some emails that were forwarded to me, and I see on page 21 in the manager's report, follow-up from the December 20th meeting that Kathy had put in there that I'm going to return for, and then a letter from a staff member concerning December 20th items, and then some concerns and about the taxes and different things. I just wanted to say that I look forward to being there on the 20th and addressing any issues that relative to those things and putting them in the context of, our strategic planning and where we've been and where we're going. And I'd also like to thank Rich for sitting in this evening and for Kathy's time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's difficult to do that from over the phone. But if you do have a question for me, I'd be happy to answer it. And if you could speak directly into the microphone a little better, because it's really hard to hear some of the conversation.
And that's a regular meeting on the 17th, I think it's referring to, so.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And I did have a conversation with Manager Lanning and about some of the concerns that I've been hearing and flying, and that some of you have expressed to me, and just felt it was better to do that face to face. It's kind of hard to have tough conversations over the phone, and sometimes the context gets lost. So, okay. So, any questions online, Councilman Burton?
No, none from here.
Okay, well, thank you, Manager Lanning, for calling in.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk's report?
I don't have anything. I was away quite a bit during the holidays, just catching up in the office.
Mm-hmm. Any questions for the clerk? Okay, thank you. We have correspondence is included in the packet. And ordinance and resolutions. Get to where I can read this tome. Okay, ordinance 1162 is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, repealing and reenacting Cordova Municipal Code, Chapter 8.40, Marijuana Regulation, removing the expired temporary prohibition against marijuana establishments within the City of Cordova, adopting regulations for such establishments, repealing and reenacting Cordova Municipal Code, Chapter 18.60, Conditional Use Permits, to include commercial marijuana facilities as a conditional use within the city, and clarifying the conditional use process applicable to such facilities, and amending Cordova Municipal Code Section 5.40.012, surtax levied on certain sales, services, and rents, to levy a surtax on the sale of retail marijuana and marijuana products within the city. And this again is a first reading because there were major modifications, so it came back again as a first reading at this meeting.
Move to approve ordinance 1162. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Councilman Allison, would you like to speak to the motion?
In general, I support the ordinance as it's written. I understand the discussion about tax, and I could be swayed on the surtax maybe still, but on first reading, I think we need to do it. I think we modified the area at our last meeting, and I assume that's included in this version. Yes, it is. So I support it as is written.
Councilman Jones, would you like to speak to the second?
Yeah, I spoke in support of it last meeting with the changing to the map 2 I don't think the maps were included in this packet, but I am glad to see that those were moved forward to another first reading, and I as well could be swayed on the tax. I would, maybe we put strike the 100% of the tax levied and lower it to 50% or 25% or even 0. And then this is something that we could revisit down the road once there is some data on sales in the community. 6% is better than 0%. And right now we're getting 0% of all the marijuana sold. And there's a good amount of marijuana sold in this community. It's just we're not seeing any of the tax revenue. So I'd hate to see a legal business get put at a disadvantage to illegal business. Thank you.
Hey, Councilman Beadle.
I'd like to move to amend that we delete on page 51. It's 5.40.012, the surtax levied on certain sales and service and rents. It starts on item B, and then item C, retail sales of marijuana and marijuana products. Like we just heard, we're selling something in the community. There will be a 6% sales tax on sales.
Okay.
I need this. Well,
So,
a second, I guess.
Second.
I'm just trying to keep this.
Can the motion get repeated? I'm not sure. I lost what the motion was.
Exactly. It's
To delete, and in section B, and retail sales of marijuana and marijuana products, item C, on page 51.
Okay, so I caught page 51, and the other two places were.
It's only one place, 5.40.012C, to
Gotcha.
delete that.
Okay.
Well, it's part and is up in B,
And
that's
the word
why I
and
did that.
B.
Used to be
I'm sorry, there's two of you talking. So what's the other section?
C.
Okay. That's
And the word and in.
okay. I see. I understand. And then the and under B. Okay. Okay. So we have a amendment. So on page 51, your packet, yeah, it's just the bolded. Just basically strike the bolded pieces there. The and under section B, and then all of section C. So we have a motion to amend.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
It just was said earlier, it's a budding, a starting business. Right now, it's black market, we're not getting nothing. In fact, it's costing us, enforcement and whatever. So I think to not burden it any further, as we heard, the cost of startup, the time and effort, and then to put the heavier tax on it, we're seeing, I think it'd be counterproductive. I think just leave it at 6%, just like everything else in any other sale in town. And if it warrants it later on, business picks up, cost of doing business come down and stuff, we can visit it later, and we've shown that we can raise taxes. I hate to.
Okay. Second?
Yeah, I would, for everything Robert just said, I'm sure it's tough to start a new business. I appreciate all the effort and investment.
So I think, okay, sorry.
Put into it, and I'm pretty sure with a little bit more information, you'll find that the marijuana industry has some things that you can't write off as a business that are going to be tougher because of federal regulations. It's going to have a tough enough go as it is, and we just try and be a little bit as pro-business as we can be.
So it sounds like four of the councilmen so far that spoke to have spoken a little bit in favor, but I was going to ask the clerk, do you think this would require a second reading? Or, I mean, it's not really material change to the affected areas. It's just really a tax structure item. So I guess we could check on it.
I'd have to check, but I did want to say that what I'm going to do, so that when you see it next time, in case you don't understand why, I'm going to take all of section 3 out, because that piece is already in code. And the only reason it's in this ordinance is to show the part we're changing, which was the added C.
Yeah.
So all of section 3 is gonna remove, and section 4 will now read section 3. So that's how it'll look. And then,
Maybe another reason, because you're just not changing a section. Okay.
Right.
So it sounds like 4 councils so far have kind of spoken in favor of this amendment, but Councilman Gard.
I'm not speaking against the amendment to ask this question, just so we're all clear. But
Okay, Mike?
I'm not speaking against this motion by asking this question, but my question is, are we gonna be incurring any more costs as a community? With anything with this above and beyond? I understand that it'll have the same tax on it. If we do this, it'll have the same tax on it that a gallon of milk will be. There would be any more cost to the city of Cordova, this being sold in meaningful cost.
I think maybe for expediency, that might be something just to direct his staff to the manager, and then he can probably give an update on the 17th. It sounds kind of speculative, but there may be some feedback from public safety or something.
That's
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment to strike the and B in item C?
well, the whole thing we're gonna do.
Yeah, it'd basically be strike that whole change in that whole section 3. Any comments, Councilman Burton?
Nope, no comments.
Okay, hearing none. So on the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. So to the main motion, the ordinance. Any further discussion? Okay, and see, this is still a voice vote. So all those in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We just have a question regarding potential expenses that might arise, and then whether or not it would come back as a first reading. Okay, so the next item, resolution 01-18-01, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, designating capital improvement projects. And on page 52, we have a draft.
I move to approve resolution 01-18-01, resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, designating capital improvement projects.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to it, Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I like how the harbor is now the city's top priority. We've been talking about it for years, and it's past the point where it should have been done already. Shipyard expansion, I've wanted to see that happen for years, so I think it's good to have that on there, and then also just general upgrades, dredging new harbors or expanding the current harbor. The sidewalks, those have been talked about for years also, and they're much needed, especially on the north side of the harbor, where the majority of the foot traffic is. So school repairs, we've heard at the last 6 meetings, I think, has come up where the gym floor needs to be addressed. We're constantly getting asked for hospital upgrades, so I like the way this list is structured, and yeah.
Okay, Councilman, I'm sorry, the second was Councilman Beadle.
Yeah, Ken, you said it pretty well there, thank you.
Okay, so no proposed changes. Further discussion, council?
The school repairs, Mr. Bitney alluded that there was a list or something. Is that something that maybe just let the school board know to talk to him? He kind of had the governor had in his budget funding school projects and stuff. Maybe that might kind of, well, Mr. Bitney's here to discuss that potential.
Okay, I think this list will be carried to Juno with us, and we'll
Well, didn't he say he had a list of requests for schools and stuff for repairs and maintenance?
Said that, well, he said in the governor's budget, there was proposed $70 million for school maintenance and upgrades, but I don't know that there was an official list of projects.
Anyway, just so the school board or something knows that maybe if they could, and Mr. Bitney's here, we could.
That's a good point. If we have estimates or anything on that we could maybe carry with us, and we could make the most of our time there. So, good point.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Jones.
if you're looking for any ideas as far as things to add, at this point in time, I'm not sure if we're at the point where we want to add something about the Crater Lake hydro or water project. Would that be something to add to this list, or maybe not yet? As a number 7 or a...
I don't think so. I think most of the funding for that would come from the federal side, and I think there's some other opportunities there. I wouldn't want to water down the city's list, to be honest. I appreciate it. I think it's a good thought. I think the Powell Creek Road is actually more of a concern, and that's something the state can move forward. But again, I'll be able to advocate for that without, I think, watering down the council's list. And that's actually going to be more of a thank you, because this DOT's really dove into that. They're actually actively working on it. So.
And then I guess that also brings me to under C, would it be more effective if we were to, instead of just put general upgrades, would it be more effective to have it more detailed, or should we leave it rather vague? So there's a lot of things we need to repair in that harbor, but I personally would like to see, and right now the replacement of the floating stock is the priority, but in the future, I would like to see us look at dredging new area. Right now we're at 100% in the summer months. I mean, there's 3-4 boats in 2 slips, many spots. It's not, I'm in one of those situations, but there's also many other Russian families who have 3 bow pickers and 2 stalls. So, I don't know if that would, it's kind of under harbor expansion, but I just not sure if it would help to add it on the list or not, to have dredging or something, or.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Beadle.
I agree. I think having bullet points, the more you can kind of, different buckets of money, different operations. And Mr. Jones, Councilman Jones is going to is, if we got a brand new South Harbor tomorrow, we would lose slips. There'd be less actual slips to rent out. Just with the boats are larger on the north side. When the state redid that, we lost a whole float. The boats got bigger. So it is something that we do need to look at. There is places, task the Harbor Commission to look at it or whatever, but for harbor expansion, because as Mr. Jones says, they are full. There's seiners I've talked to that would like to leave their boat here year round, but they take it south because there is no room, or they have to look elsewhere.
I'm just thinking out loud, what if we just reworded this to say harbor expansion and general upgrades?
It's kind of neat to have some bullet points. If you're handing this off to someone, general upgrades could be prettier lampposts.
Maybe, I guess one thing, maybe we make C harbor expansion and then add a letter D for general upgrades.
Excuse me. How would that work?
Sidewalks, lighting, whatever.
Yeah, general upgrades could be electrical systems and lighting, the sidewalks, that kind of stuff.
How's that sound, council? Just make harbor expansion item C, and then have item D, general upgrades. Sidewalks, crane.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's okay, I'll make that modification. We'll certainly convey the message that we have the largest fishing fleet in the state, and we're at 100% capacity and during when it matters. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Ellison.
I think since this is a resolution, we need to make an amendment and pass that.
Yeah.
We can't just change it.
Okay. So right now we have draft as presented. So we need to make an amendment.
I'll make an amendment, if I may, to make item C, general upgrades, harbor expansion, then item D, general upgrades on North Harbor sidewalks. Is that how you had it worded?
Okay,
I'll second.
have a motion to amend the list in a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks for that point of order. Any other modifications to the list?
How do we act on this? I mean, that north side sidewalks, if it's not a major dollar, could that be a tier 2? I mean, in the summertime down there, you've got the whole dock, and then you have 2 major processors. How do we discuss any of these to bring them forward internally here?
I think that would be maybe some good information to bring back. I think in discussing with Mr. Bitney that he's had the port, improvements engineer contact him periodically. They really would like to, help Cordova out, I think. My understanding is if on the tier 2, if we're going to do $200,000 of maintenance money anyway, we can request a tier 2 grant. And as long as it fits in with all the other communities and fits in that total of $5 million, we could do one of two things. If we want to do $200,000 of maintenance, we can either request a $100,000 match and put up $100,000, or put up the $200,000 that would be planned to, and then just get $200,000 a match and do that much more work.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked the question earlier about, is there a limit? Well, I think what Bitney had said when we discussed earlier, there's really no lower limit. So, if you ask for $50,000 match to $50,000 you put up, you're probably going to get it. So,
Well, and that was it too, is if the projects come out to be shy of, $500,000 shy of their limit, they're going to look for smaller projects that they could fully fund. I mean, they could fund other things. There might be a $2 million project they can't fund, but there might be a smaller dollar item.
I think we can bring that back to council on the 17th and still have another bite before we head to Juneau. And then for purposes of this though, for purposes of this priorities list, is there any further changes or discussion on that?
Question.
Okay, question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the resolution is approved as amended.
As amended.
Yeah, as amended, yeah. Okay, next item is Resolution 01-18-03, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the city to submit to the qualified voters of the city at the March 6, 2018 regular election the question of whether or not to prohibit operation of marijuana cultivation, manufacturing, and testing facilities, as well as marijuana retail stores within the city.
So moved. Second.
Okay, would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Beadle?
I would. There were some really good points brought out earlier, and I think those are the exact points that why I'd be in favor of this is. An example is Valdez. They just need enough people to get a petition to go around to get a special election going. So somebody could put in a lot of time and effort and money, and this could be a petition going around, and it could go to ballot anyway. And if it failed, if it says the community doesn't want it, they spent a lot of time, effort, and money trying to establish a business to have it fail later. What this would do would allow, on March 6th, less than 2 months away, would establish the voice of Cordova, not ours, but what Cordova wants. And if we want to look at history, the 2-to-1. So that's up to the business owner to decide if they want to move forward on things. But this would say definitively, go ahead or no. They wouldn't have to get started and get shut down. They could proceed heads on. Somebody else could step in also. But then the cost, special election, we're already going to have elections. It's a little more print on the paper. Somebody steps in the booth and you got half a dozen things to check. You moved on. We don't have to have a whole nother one. It's in March. It's going to be locals. So I'm speaking in favor of it. I think this would could validate what they want to do or the community wants.
Okay, Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the same mindset as Robert on this one. I am curious, I guess, about the action we took on 0118-01, whether it would be coming back as a first reading, because it was my understanding that you have to have 15 days between when we approve the first reading and when the second reading can occur. So it was going to like jump a meeting. So it was actually going to take us 3 meetings to get that. Is that my understanding correct on that last one?
On ordinance.
Only take one reading.
No, I think he means ordinance 1162.
1162, sorry.
Oh.
You know, if that was,
It's not gonna come back next time for a second. If it's appropriate for a second reading, it's gonna have to skip one meeting just because there's a requirement of 15 days.
Yeah. And if it comes back as a first reading, it could be back on the 17th.
yeah, so if it's back as a first reading on the 17th and then it has to skip a meeting, then it's putting us at the end of February. So really having this on the ballot is only delaying them by a week past our other ordinance. Yeah,
She could go ahead right now, though. Our ordinance
Yeah.
is meaningless. She's just following
These
state
are
law right now.
unrelated.
They're unrelated to.
One does not affect the other, and
yeah.
it does.
And can I make another point about the election that Mr. Beadle mentioned?
Yes.
If the people initiate an ordinance and, it all comes back to me and it becomes certified, it can wait in my office for the next regular meeting, regular election, or council could call a special election. But I've had, initiative petitions that sit for 6 or 8 months in my office waiting for the next regular. So it's not an automatic special election, just to clarify.
Okay, but then that would be an unknown for
Yes.
even that much longer.
I agree.
Okay. But that's council's choice whether they want to wait. Okay. Did that answer your question, Councilman?
Yeah, it did. I was just curious if,
Okay.
there was a 15-day waiting period.
And then you spoke to the actual resolution. So further discussion, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I guess I'm along the same lines that Councilmember Beadle had with the initiative process. I would just as soon put this on the regular election, although it was stated it could sit there for a year, but that puts a lot more of the vendors' investment at risk. I would bet my truck on the outcome of the election. I wouldn't bet my life, but certainly bet my truck on it, how it's gonna come. But, that's up to the investor, what they're willing to invest. But I'd certainly rather have a vote come out this March than the next March if it's, if people have changed their mind that much since the last election. But I think it's been discussed before. I think it would come up the other way. But my concern, I guess, with the language of the proposition is I think it could be confusing unless we can add a sentence to the end there that voting yes prohibits and voting no allows, or something along those lines, because as you're reading, shall the city of Cordova adopt a local option to prohibit, if somebody just reads the first 10 words of that, which I'm sure a lot of people do when they get in the voting booth, they just see marijuana and they're gonna say yes or no.
Is that an amendment?
Well, I don't know if you can you, on a proposition, can you put voting yes does this and voting no does that? I mean, is that, I don't know if that's proper, that's what I'm asking the clerk.
Why not?
I mean, I believe we'd have to amend this, and I'd want to look into exactly how I'd want it worded. I would, you know what I mean? The resolution,
Yeah.
calling it should. I see what you're saying.
It's just
So
confusing to
maybe
me a
just
little
a
bit,
sentence.
you know, after digesting it for a while, I know what voting yes and voting no does, but I'm not sure that,
You think people are gonna say marijuana, yes or no, and
Yeah.
if they're gonna vote yes if they want marijuana, but in fact, this.
in fact,
is a
if they
yes,
vote
is a
yes to
no,
this, they're
is
prohibiting it.
Yeah. I'm sure that if you guys pass this and tell me to get with the attorney to put such a line in for the actual ballot, we can do that. So we will do that.
I concur. I had the same issue when I was reading it, but then I remembered that it was legalized in the state and each community had the option of opting out. So according to that, you're voting on to opt out. So it can be misleading and unclear. So I think as a service to the voters so that they're not misled or their own, I agree. I'd love to see a no means
A yes vote prohibits marijuana in Cordova,
yes.
something like that.
Otherwise, I think somebody's gonna have to do a big ad campaign and spend a bunch more money and,
I agree.
you know.
Okay, so I'm just, I guess just for process purposes, if the council passed this, it would be with staff direction to, basically.
Yes, because I need it today. It
Yeah,
needs to be done
because
by
there's
January
a
6th.
timeline.
Yeah,
So
so I'll ensure that,
to make the administrative change to perhaps add a line behind yes, or clarify that a yes vote is to prohibit and a no vote is to allow. Okay. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Weiss.
I'm going to speak against this. Actually, I think there has been a vote. I don't think this is like when we call a special meeting and have people come in, you know, that's taking a pulse of the people and you don't actually know when you take the pulse of someone as if they just went up a flight of stairs or not. People did vote on this. I want, you know, if we do something, say recall the councilman, you know, the people voted that in, it takes initiative and you have to do that, but people did vote on this and I don't think we need to give this person an opportunity to spend a lot of money on a special ad campaign. They're investing in Cordova doing this. That's it.
Okay. Further discussion, council?
I agree with Mr. Weed.
Okay. We have
Kind of on both sides of the knife. I agree with Ms. Myers' position there, but I also know that we have a tendency to eat our own young in Cordova. And we've only got so much energy to move forward here, and I hate to spend it spinning our wheels, arguing over something like this.
Okay. So I'm not sure if that's for,
I haven't decided yet.
okay. Further discussion? Councilman Jones?
Well, after the confusion that Mr. Allison and Mr. Beadle have spoken to, the potential confusion, and what Mr. Weiss has said, I might be back on the fence as well with this. So there's where I'm at.
A vote will clarify everything.
Yes.
we're gonna do a roll call.
Any further discussion?
One more time, I would just say this has been voted on. Sorry. Oh wait, and if it's a voter initiative, let someone take that initiative. It's not that many signatures to get, but let someone take some initiative for it. We landslid this before, and I realize that there's a lot of difference with allowing this in your state and allowing this in your town, but let someone take that initiative.
Okay. Councilman Beadle.
Just one last time, with an election, it would give clear direction for them. There's always that hanging over the head if somebody got frustrated or, got an initiative going, that all that investment stuff could go away. I mean, things do change. All I'd like to do is make sure that moving forward after March 6th, council, the city would have clear direction. There wouldn't be no maybes, ifs, what ifs, and it is a large investment to gamble on, and this would clear up any doubt.
Okay, Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm sort of on both sides as well. I could see, the merit to both sides of the issue. I don't want to de-incentivize a business person who wants to get a business going in town, and I see where you're coming from of not knowing, if you should start it up or not based on the vote. But then again, to have it come up for a special election and have that hanging over it for potentially a year or 8 months or so, the certainty that could potentially come with a vote is, with the clarification that was discussed by Councilman Beadle, I think I'm leaning towards supporting it, just so there would be that certainty, even though it might delay your ability to get moving.
Councilman Weiss.
I would offer, it sounds like this is a risk the business owner's willing to accept. Also, we, as Mr. Meyer stated earlier, we wouldn't stop a cannery from purchasing fish in May or starting up. We would do everything they could. And this is gonna be her season. This is gonna be when she makes her money. It gets to continue. It's the person ready to take this risk has told us how they feel.
Councilman, I think Allison, then Jones.
Yeah, I'll speak on the other side of the issue so that we can all be on both sides of the issue. Letting it, and this is for the business that has applications in already, perhaps having a year of initiative holding over gives them the opportunity to prove to the community that it's a viable business and could maybe even garner more votes in favor of keeping it. That is exactly what happened in the other communities that had a vote after it was already initiated. So I agree that the vote has been taken here. I thought that we had to have a special election within a certain amount of time and that would cost us more, but that has been clarified this evening that it does not have to have a special election, so it wouldn't be any additional cost to the city. So I guess with that, I will be firmly on the no side of this vote.
Councilman Jones.
Well, I'm not sure the procedure, but I have a question maybe for Melina. Maybe somebody at this table or a staff member might know, but I'm just curious if she has to delay until after this vote, if it would keep her from being able to sell May 1st because of the gestation of from a seed to a market ready product.
I don't.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Beadle.
It's still legal. Mm-hmm. She can start whenever she gets her paperwork or permits in. We're not holding any of that up. This just says is Cordova each municipality has the ability to opt out. It's not doesn't hold her up from, she's got her license from the city, she's got her license from the state, she's met all her qualifications. All we're saying is this would give her, not a mandate, but a more rest assured that it isn't going to pop up as an initiative, that the community's behind it, I'm not against starting a small business. I think this is what the community needs. I mean, I'm tired of raising taxes and stuff. I want to see other economy. But I just, I think that this would give a definite, and I don't see where the holdup's gonna be. It's not, the holdup would be as if if yes prevailed.
Okay, we're starting to wonder a little bit. Councilman Guard.
The argument's starting to turn a little paternalistic here to where we're trying to save the business owner from themselves for a bit. I mean, if the business owner is willing to take the risk, the business owner is willing to take the risk on whether somebody starts in an initiative position to reconsider it as a community. I've been wrong numerous times in my life, but I would guess whether we hold the vote in March ourselves or somebody puts in an initiative position later, we're not going to fall below the 2-to-1 margin that we had as a community. So I'll be voting no.
Okay, I think Councilman Jones, Councilman Burton.
I'm having a hard time hearing Mr. Guard, but I was wondering whether or not it would be appropriate to make a motion.
What happened?
Okay,
Ordinance discussion.
I'm sorry, Councilman Burton. I think we're trying to turn up the volume when we actually cut you off. I heard, we lost you for a second there, but I thought I heard you ask if, about making a motion.
Essentially, I was wondering if it was appropriate to set aside the rules for the remainder of this resolution discussion and Melina has been able to hear turns going around council and the discussion and the topic of whether or not this could be pulled back in a referendum vote and things of that nature, if she wants to just speak to that for a moment. But we would have to, in order to do that, it would have to be, we'd have to set aside the rules for the rest of this resolution discussion. So that was my thought.
So basically suspend the rules for a minute to allow testimony? Or?
I second the motion.
Question?
That's fine.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hey, Ms. Meyer, if you'd like to answer council questions as you can.
Sure.
And I think I'll defer to Councilman Jones first because he had a question. I'm not sure it got answered.
Oh, well, I was just wondering if this vote, if we pass this and it goes to the ballot, if that would prohibit you from being able to have market-ready product by the time the season starts.
It would delay me on my business plan, not necessarily from the state, it's not a state requirement, but if it's going up to a vote, I've already invested a lot of money and I won't be investing anymore until I know for certain what the outcome of the election would be.
Thank you.
Councilman Allison.
But just to clarify, you are willing to take the risk of an initiative rather than having it on this election?
Yeah, I think that's been brought up too, like the fact of starting and allowing people to come in and see what regulation looks like is a big positive to the industry, and those other ballot measures did have that. A lot of community members were able to go in and just see what it's like. I mean, Councilman Beadle went over to Valdez and was able to go into a shop and see what an operating business looked like and take a tour of a cultivation facility. It's better to see what it actually is rather than fear the unknown, and right now it's unknown in this town.
Councilman Burton, I apologize, you actually made the motion. Did you have any questions for Ms. Meyer?
No, I wanted her to be able to voice, how our discussion was affecting her thought process, and whether it would or not, and then also allow council a chance to ask questions. I think I've heard what I need to.
Okay. Any further questions, Councilman Beadle?
Just a comment is I've had people approach me as a councilman and adamantly against marijuana in town. And with that, it's not about you, business or anything. It just that maybe it's about me. I don't want the community going, you guys brought this, you made the decision. I wanted the community to give us an okay. So, but there is some people in the community that have expressed adamantly that they don't want to hear. So that's.
Okay. We've suspended the rules for questions, so.
Can I maybe answer that? I know it was a comment, but maybe answer the comment.
Sure.
You guys really have tough jobs doing the budget and raising taxes, and a lot of the stuff that you guys pass is not favorable to some people, and nothing will be. But this is something that you're actually not really making a decision on. There's been a vote, so not making a decision, I mean, you're making yourselves make a decision, basically. You're making yourself have a decision to put it on for another election when it's something that has already been decided. So this is one topic that you actually don't have to decide on. You're just deciding on regulating it. That's what government does.
Further questions, council? Okay, thank you, Ms. Meyer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the main motion. I've heard lots of yeses, I've heard nos, I've heard yeses become nos, I think.
You should probably do a roll, Rhett.
Yeah, I will do a roll call vote. It sounds like it's gonna be close. We have Councilman online. Any further comments, discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
David Allison,
No.
Robert Beadle,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
No.
Jeff Gard,
No.
James Weiss,
No.
James Burton,
No.
Ann Schaefer.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, motion fails. Okay. So we don't have any unfinished business or new and miscellaneous business on the agenda. Next item is pending agenda, and I guess to get the council a jump start on that, I think in the last meeting we discussed putting on the January 17th a discussion of the sales tax cap exemptions. I remember that. So,
A discussion?
is that from last meeting?
Remember.
I don't remember this.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna put it on the pending agenda then without Councilman Gard.
I'd like to see it put on the agenda. When we were doing our finalization of ordinances for the sales tax cap, we had a long discussion about possible exemptions for the future, and there seemed to be a fairly solid consensus from the council at that time that we were going to leave the tax cap on lumber and building materials, house packages and stuff at the old level because we were going to capture those dollars on property improvements, new construction. We'd be capturing those on property taxes. We also talked about exempting engine packages and power packages so we could keep local vendors competitive in the market. So I'd like to see that put on the 17th, but I won't be here for the meeting on the 17th. I will be in Virginia.
What do we want, a discussion item, or are you sponsoring an ordinance to amend those exemptions back?
I'd like to amend those exemptions back.
Councilman Jones?
Yeah, so I was working on it today, and I have a draft ordinance here. Wasn't able to distribute it out, but I would like to see us bring back the tax cap and discuss rolling it back to maybe 3,000 or a 4,000 level, and from the 7,500. We've heard some new information from many businesses in the community of how detrimental this is going to be to their bottom line and to their business. We have some new information regarding the fish tax that was brought in from last year. And, you know, had some community backlash over bonuses and pharmacy and other items after we just raised everybody's taxes. And so I would like to see us revisit the tax cap completely. Maybe not just the exemptions, but the whole thing, whole shebang.
Okay, so just to process, so basically the ordinance was adopted in December, so.
November 1st.
November 1st, yeah, so, and they're effective January 1st, so the ordinance would have to be repealed and a new ordinance passed with changes.
I don't believe so.
Just a change, I mean, just sponsor an ordinance to make amendments to what is now on the books.
Would that be a 3 reading process, or the 2 reading process? Okay.
It was my understanding when we talked about this, that it was better to do this, the exemptions, as a separate item and not put it in the ordinance at the time.
I don't recall that. I would have suggested
yeah,
if you knew you wanted to.
Yeah, it wasn't done when the ordinance was passed, so.
Was a conversation with the manager
Oh, I don't recall.
at the time, but.
So Councilman Jones.
Well, I guess, I'm all for exempting house packages and lumber and boat engines, but at some point, when you just start picking and choosing these people who are going to be exempt, why not just have a discussion about lowering it back down for everybody? Because this is going to affect every business in town. It's going to affect my business. It's going to affect your business. It's going to affect Points North. It's going to affect the hotels. And I hate to see us run business out of this town. We talk all the time about wanting to grow our pie. And I'd just like to see this revisited.
I agree.
Okay, so we can put it on, I think, as a discussion item.
Should we have a work session?
Yes.
Oh, we have a work session on the 17th.
We have BDO,
Or, I guess-
UBS.
UBS.
We do have a work session at 6 o'clock, so.
And I have these 2 draft ordinances to save the staff from having to go through it and do it. So I can give these to Susan and she can get them distributed for our workshop.
Well, I don't think we're gonna do a work session, because we have one already on the 17th. I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Mayor? We're gonna put these on as ordinances on the 17th? Or are we gonna have a discussion item on the agenda?
Well, I guess I'm kind of hearing different objectives, so I think it would be good to have a discussion. Manager will be back. I think this would have impacts on the budget that the council has adopted. This was a piece of balancing the budget, so it may require a budget amendment as well. So I think I'd probably prefer a discussion item where you can have a staff discussion or perspective, and maybe it would be good in the meantime for council, if you have a draft ordinance you'd like to propose, maybe get it to Susan so that she can distribute it to council and the manager, and then they have something to speak to and discuss, so.
Does he need a second for that? If I
don't think so.
I could.
We'll just put it on the pending agenda for discussion item.
Okay, well, I know if the council member wants to put something on the agenda, you need 2, so
If there's no.
I was volunteering.
We've had, I hear 2 councilmen want it on the agenda, but I hear different objectives, so.
I want it as more than a discussion item. I would like to have an ordinance on the agenda and then we can discuss it. If that's.
Well, let's, because what I'm proposing is drastically different than what you're proposing as far as that, so we need some time to discuss and see where we want to end up. I'm not saying it won't be where you're at or what, but there's different enough viewpoints.
Yeah,
It needs to be discussion before we.
I just think there's enough new information that's come out since the November 1st vote that it could have affected the way that we looked at these ordinances.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think for process purposes, it would be a good idea to get a collective idea of where the council wants to go with this before we start amending an ordinance 30 times and end up with, having a first reading 3 or 4 successive meetings, so. So if that's workable for council, we can get it on there as a discussion item. But in the meantime, if you have draft ordinance, I think you should probably circulate it so council can look at it.
I'll use what you have, I just won't number it so it won't look like it's an actual ordinance for action. It'll just be a draft for discussion.
Okay,
I'll make it clear.
would that work for council?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mainly I wanted it on the agenda so that people can come in and berate us before the meeting instead of waiting till the end.
okay.
Even if it were a discussion item.
Okay, other pending agenda items? Councilman Weiss?
I'm not sure where the appropriate part to mention this is. I had a conversation with Councilman Jones once. It does have to refer to an exemption. He put in a motion for an exemption once. I was on a telecall for the meeting. I didn't hear it. And also, our administrator kicks us off at 10. I've had to call you before. Personally on the phone. I'd like to see this, direct manager to get this issue sought out. I've talked to Susan about it as well. But our administrator kicks us off at 10, and if there's something to clean up, we need to clean it up.
I will call. It's Copper Valley is our teleconference. I just didn't know that happened, so
Okay,
I'll try and figure it out.
that's a good point.
Seems like it's a time thing. It was right at 4 hours after the line went live at 6 p.m. We started a workshop and we both got kicked off.
But you couldn't get back on.
Yeah, they closed the teleconference. Okay,
Maybe it's a thing because in case you forget to hang up on the teleconference, they have a failsafe to shut it off 4 hours later. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll fix it.
just looking at other things on the pending agenda here.
I know planning meets next week and has several things that we'll have on the 17th from their meeting. So don't need to load it up. Right then?
So anything else for pending agenda? Okay, next item. Audience participation.
This time I just want to say thank you for taking the time to look at this issue and governing. So thank you.
See, council, it happens.
Greg Meyer, 1 Kenry Row. I want to say thank you also. There's I've said this before, but a lot of you guys weren't here. There's about 180 municipalities in Alaska. Cordova is one of the highest real estate exempt communities in Alaska at 55%. There's about 11, I think it's 11, it's their 2015 numbers, but there's 11 communities of the 180 that have bed tax. There's 4 or 5 that have auto rental tax. We have one small business in Cordova that has a rental car company. There's only 4 or 5 other municipalities in the whole state that have a rental car tax, and one's Anchorage, one's Fairbanks. So I'm just trying to look out for the little guy a little bit. So I appreciate what you guys did here. And I guess I missed something with these letters and stuff. Is there any way we can look at the letters that you guys are getting for repealing these taxes? I was kind of involved in all you guys' strategic planning. I thought you guys had a good plan. We had big shortfalls by taking out a lot of the fish tax, even though we got it this year. You guys decided to do a $800,000 budget. And just because we got it this year, I don't know why that changes things. This is 1 year. And we're going to take forest receipts out and make your budget accordingly. We got to get that money somewhere. We've cut the city budget back, I think, pretty far. We do have a building that we said we were going to get rid of when we built this one, but council for some reason couldn't act on that. There are ways to do it. You could sell it to somebody, put it on the tax roll before you sell it, make a lease, make a $1 a year lease with them for 10 years with the fire department and the police. They could stay there for 10 years while you go get the funds for a new building. There's ways to get your buildings on the tax rolls. When we built this building, we were going to get rid of the library and in the museum and put that on the tax rolls, and there was this great business plan for that, right? That really hasn't gone anywhere. It's tough to start a small business. All these that, making a little mall up there was a wonderful idea, but the practicality of starting a small business in this town and making it succeed it's not that easy. There's evidence right up there, but you guys can get rid of a building before you put some more money into it, which you're going to do soon. I think it needs a boiler or something. It's gonna need windows, it's gonna need a roof. Let someone else pay it. Sell it for $1. Put it on tax rolls. Make yourself a 10-year lease. Keep the fire department and police there. I mean, I think we have to think out of the box. We got problems with travel. We got problems with the budget. No business wants taxes. But as I said before, as a business owner, I would rather have taxes on my business so I can write them off than have them on my home, on my groceries, on my personal stuff where I can't write it off. I mean, I think that makes sense. And somehow we have to get more out of the summer help, and the small little business I think is going to do that, but we need to get some more revenue out of the summer people, whether that's to the processors, to the fishermen, get more tourism in here, whatever it is, but we need to work on it. We need to think outside the box, but we need to keep our transportation. We lost Raven in the winter. We're going to lose Alaska Airlines. They're going to cut back because they're not doing the combis. We're losing freight. I don't know if you guys have noticed in the post office or shipment that we're getting a big delays already because they don't have the combis. We're going to lose our ferry. Fishing keeps us going. But the small businesses and having great travel options helps our quality of life. I think we have a real strong fishing group here, but I think we need to look outside of that a little bit and cut some costs by getting rid of some buildings, maybe even the chamber, maybe down here. Just think of options. Nothing's off the table, And you're going to get pushback from these these canneries. This fuel tax, I wasn't really in favor of it, but it looked like a good way to generate some revenue, so what the heck? And if these processors are going to say, or these big companies are going to say, look, we're not going to fuel up, don't do this or whatever, then my question back to them is, okay, how much do I have to raise it to make up my budget? 10 cents?
I wasn't hearing that. I talked to all the processors.
Yeah, but I don't know. It seems like you guys had a great systematic plan going where you figured out your priorities, and then you figured out a budget to fit that. Now you got it backsliding. I missed 1 or 2 meetings. I don't know where all this repeal stuff's coming from. But anyway, I do appreciate the job you guys are doing, and thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Any letter that has gone to all of you, I've published, right?
Yeah.
And if you guys ever get one that you think was sent to all of you, I should get a copy.
I think we've heard public testimony.
It's more public testimony.
And I think the letters that were referred to in the manager's report may have been from me to you and to Clay, perhaps, or forwarded to him.
Okay.
Tammy Altamont, 811 Woodland Drive. I just want to say I'm glad to see the school on the CIP list. Glad to hear talk about the sales tax cap. When it was first mentioned last year, I know that I did speak in caution that raising it too high would could have some effects of this business in Cordova. And I know the last time, it was 2 years ago that it was raised, and it was raised by $30 from 150 to 180. And so to go so far to 450 is a long ways to go. And all at one time too, on top of that, the fuel tax. And I knew that there was something, but when it all comes all at once, and then we were down getting fuel before the end of the year, trying to fuel up before the tax cap came and the 4 cents, and because it will affect our business. And so I'm glad to hear that it's going to be talked about, because I think that it's just not promoting business in Cordova. And also, with the talk, when a business is starting, it is hard, but I think I would just say remember that you're talking about a whole business community and not just focus on one business. If one business comes forward, which I'm, not saying anything about a business, but if they come forward, that you're looking at a whole business community of somebody coming forward with the same type of thing and not focusing on just one person's business. And then also there's an RFP out right now for the harbor.
Waste oil.
Yeah. And I know in the past, it's in code that there's a bidder's preference, a local bidder's preference. And I don't think that necessarily it's been used or brought up. And I know it's based on price. And I know there's a qualification in this bid package for different criteria. And I know that it's not mentioned in there, and I don't know if it's something that would be applicable because it is a design build, but just something to think about and just, because it is in city code. So that's it.
Thank you. Audience comments?
Scott, 204 Boardwalk Way, manager North Star Lumber. I'd like to thank you guys for bringing the sales tax back up on the cap. Look at our Main Street. There's 5 empty buildings on it right now. We need to bring business back to Cordova, not run it out. Again, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for bringing the sales tax cap back up.
Thank you. Audience comments? Okay, we do have an executive, we have council comments actually. Start to my left, Councilman Schaefer.
Thanks everyone for coming and waiting out the meeting to share your comments. And yeah, Happy New Year.
Councilman Jones.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody in the audience for participating tonight, and I just implore you to keep coming in and keep letting us hear your thoughts. It's really important for the decisions that we make around this table, and I just thank my fellow council members for coming tonight and putting up with me for another one.
Councilman Weiss.
Echo both of those, and I would offer, I hear a lot of people say that they're just not able to come to meetings, but it doesn't take that long to just spend an hour and read a packet online. And we're all available. You have all our numbers. You have all of our emails. You can send an email to Susan. It'll get to all of us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Councilman Burton.
Just like to echo the comments for me. Thanks.
Councilman Gard.
I will make the same comment as Councilman Burton. It was well spoken.
Councilman Beadle.
Yes, thanks everybody, and thanks for your comments. It pays to come to the meetings here. I've been spreading the word. It's amazing how many people don't know that this is broadcast on YouTube. You can go back and look at past council meetings. It's, I think, City of Cordova on the YouTube channel. They have archives, but it's amazing how many people don't know. So spread the word. Your input's very important. But the word must be getting out because I've been getting chewed out a lot lately. So it's working. But thanks for your time and everybody for being here. Thank you.
Councilman Allison?
No comment, thank you.
Okay. I just remembered the other thing I was trying to remember about pending agenda was council training, but I'll bring that up maybe at the next meeting. So the next item on the agenda is executive session. So we'll take a 5-minute recess to allow the room to clear out. Thank you.